Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online build video with me, Sherman. Today guys, I bring you guys another Warden ice tank. That's right, this is just called the ice tank. I didn't know what else to call it because, I'll be honest, there's nothing else I can call it. It's just too freaking cool. So first off, I need to thank Nellum6 for giving me the initiative to work on this, and I will say this, I was up very late working on it, and it took me a little bit to get it done. I finally got it done at about midnight last night, and then I did a lot of testing with it. I was taking it into Delves, I took it into the new prison, I took it anywhere I could take it to get a good amount of testing in on this, because I didn't have anybody on last night. There was nobody I knew on, really, so I just, and it was so late, I didn't want to, you know, be like shouting out in the zone, anyone looking for a group for Black Prison, or Black Rose Prison, to see about, you know, testing the build and stuff, so, but I did get a lot of testing in, and it's an amazing build. So here we go. Taking a look at this build. This is a Breton Warden. This is the you can go with other races. You can go with other things. There's some adjustments you have to make quite a bit for this build to work appropriately. But out of all the builds I've made for an ice tank, this is by far the more interesting one. So, as you can see, 29k max magic, a 32k health, and this is in light armor, guys. So that's a lot of health for somebody to have in light armor. 16k stamina, which is really good for dodge rolling. You don't have to worry about blocking because all the blocking you do is going to be magicka based. But yeah, it's just crazy. 1328 magic recovery, and then when you drink a pot, your magic recovery goes up to 15 something. Let me fix this real quick, because this is just, I'm really meticulous about certain things, and that just drives me nuts. So yeah, really good overall recovery for the magicka side, which is what we play off of mostly. So having that good magic recovery plays into this really well. Next up, you're going to notice our spell resistance 22,000, physical resistance 21,000. Because we are a Breton, we get a lot more spell resist. We're also wearing, this is a light armor tank. This is not a heavy armor tank. This is completely 100% light armor tank, and it's crazy that I can even get close to this in resistances without using something like Fortified Grass. So we are using the Atronach Mundustone. We do have Tri-Stat Food for the max health, max stamina, and max magicka, and it plays out really well with this. So let's go on over here. Do the food itself. Longfin pasty with melon sauce, probably the best food you can get on the live servers, and it's actually super cheap. A lot of people make this, and so you can get it just about anywhere, and you can get it usually, sometimes you can get it about 5k for a stack of 200, so it's really cheap. Next up, we are using Tri-Stat Potions. This is going to be our best return of resources, and since we aren't using the potion cooldown stuff on this, it's only every 45 seconds, but do not worry, because this build has literally almost no resource problems with the way it's set up. Now, in dungeons, like if you're blocking a lot, you will need resources a lot more often. But if you're playing this build how it's intended to be played, you will not be blocking except major hits from bosses. And that's mainly because those are the only hits that you need to block. The other ones you can take, because your shields will absorb the crap out of them. And you'll see what I'm talking about when we get to that. Alright, so moving on to the monster set. The first thing is Ice Heart. Ice Heart is a really cool set for ice tanks, mainly because, one, it's based off of critical damage. So that's the hard part. The nice thing is that it's got a 20% chance to give you a 10k shield that deals 1000 frost damage to all enemies within 5 meters. So if you're tanking, you're going to get a really high uptime of this, and the uptime, not only does this help keep the ice damage going and the shield going, it also gives you the chance to apply chilled. So that's the thing about this build. Chilled is really important on ice tanking, because that's your main source of minor maim with it. Now, with all the testing I've done, the best uptime of chilled I've had with this build was a 77%. And I had the same uptime with the Northern Wind. So both of them together They both can maintain a 77% uptime of minor maim, but you get almost 100% uptime of weakening too. So it's like good trade-off. So we are running a Nirnhoned pretty much on every piece of gear except for the chest, which is reinforced and it's heavy. And this is where we get all of our resistances from. This is a non-block build. This is no sturdy gear. This is all Nirnhoned. And this is what makes this build really, really intense, is it's all Nirnhoned gear. We are running 3 tri-stats on the big pieces, and then on the smaller pieces we're running health, max health on them. This is going to give us the maximum amount of health we can get on the build with this kind of setup. And then with the tri-stats, we're getting all 3 stats, which really plays well into this, because like I said, you still need stamina, even as an ice tank, for dodge rolling. And, you know, if you got to dodge roll twice, you want a big stamina pool. And then the fact that break free costs stamina, bashing costs stamina. So having that 16k really plays into it really well. So getting that extra stamina out of that out of those tri-stats is really important. All right, moving on to the jewelry. Now this is the other. This is the one of the sets we're wearing. By the way, we're wearing Alicia's Bulwark, and Alicia's Bulwark. Before we get to the jewelry, is probably the best setup for this particular build. The reason I say that is it gives you 2 things of physical resist, and since you're a Breton, you already get 4k resist, and then light armor gives you extra spell resist. And then, yeah, so you get a lot of spell resist for being a Breton, being in light armor, and all that. So you don't really need a whole lot more of that. What you need is more physical resistance, and that's where this set comes into play, is it takes out that space. But it's a 5-piece bonus that plays into this. So when you take damage from a melee attack, you have a 15% chance to reduce that attacker's weapon damage by 10% for 5 seconds. This can be applied to multiple targets. So any enemy that hits you has a chance of proccing this on themselves for 5 seconds. So this can really help out in trash encounters and stuff, especially if you're doing like Hellrust Citadel, where you get a lot of melee attackers. Inside of Mauve Lorcaz, you get attacked by a lot of physical damage. This can help mitigate that damage to practically nothing. So it's really, really good. When you think about it, minor maim, weakening, and this on top of it, you just pretty much negate a mass majority of their damage. So it's pretty OP in the long run. All right. Moving on to the jewelry, we are running 5-piece Plague Doctors, with the jewelry being 2 spell damage, 1 infused, magic recovery, and then healthy on the other 2. You can go tri-stat on these, but I would suggest sticking with healthy. This is going to give you the most health out of this set. This set is made to increase your max health, so it's a really, really powerful setup. If you aren't playing a Breton and you are playing something else, I would suggest switching out Alicia's Bulwark for Fortified Brass. It is another really powerful resistance set, especially in light armor. And when you mix it with Plague Doctors, you get a lot of health, you get a lot of resistances, and everything else can be made up with the fact that you're in light armor. So, alright, so moving on to the stabs. We are running 2 ice stabs, both infused, one with Crusher, one with Weakening. Now, I have done the test with this as well, with the Absorb Magicka on the back bar, and on the front bar a Hardening enchant, and I will tell you, this thing becomes indestructible, like literally indestructible with its shields and stuff. I took it against world bosses, I've taken this thing against all kinds of stuff with that setup, and was still able to maintain a 11k penetration, I think it was, on the enemies, along with this. So it's like, this thing's just super OP. Not kidding you guys. It's like way ridiculous. So, very powerful setup. Works really well. Has really good sustain. Really good survivability. And when you do buff up, just so you guys can see, you get a 27k spell resist with a 27k physical. If you swap bars, it drops to 26-25, but that's fine, because that's still just 1,000 less. You're still at 45% damage reduction with both of these, which is really good. So, moving on now to the skills. Make sure you get all your class passives. This is very, very important to get all your class passives, because your passives are active no matter what, as long as you have them. So, and then make sure you get your weapon passives. And just so people know, in order to get ancient knowledge, you do not you have to have a staff ability slotted. I did not have this on the Northern Wind. So on the Northern Wind, if you go ahead and change it up to be more similar to this, because we don't have Dampen Magic on that one, you just change it to this same setup. So make sure that you you do that, because it's really crazy. All right, so that is that. Let me go ahead and move these back around. So make sure that you do that. On light armor, make sure you get all the passives. It's really important. Medium armor, you just need the top two and the bottom one. The bottom one is the main one you need out of this because of the roll dodge cost reduction. That plays into this build quite a bit. And then heavy armor, you want all three of the top three passives. So all three of these, and maximize them all, because you're going to want these. They come in really handy. Moving on to soul magic. Summon, soul summons, and soul shock. You can be a werewolf or a vampire with this. It really doesn't change how it works. It's still really powerful. So the vampire does give you more magic recovery, 10% more. Fighters Guild, intimidating presence. Mages, you do need the persuasive will for questing, and then magic controller, because you are using inner light on the back bar. You don't need anything from Sigil Order Thieves Guild. Undaunted, you do need Undaunted Command or Undaunted Metal. And just to let you know, if you wanted to, you could take Necrotic Orb or Inner Fire and put it on the back bar, and drop the Inner Light. The problem with that is, though, you lose Magicka, so you have to put Northern Storm back here as well. So you can't use Aggressive Warhorn. But you could take Necrotic Orb and Inner Fire to taunt and stuff like that. Moving on to the Assault, Aggressive Warhorn, of course, and then Racial. Make sure you get all your Racial passives, especially with this, because that Spell Resist plays so well with this build. And then the Magic, Reduced Magicka cost. So that's the thing you have to understand about wearing light armor. You get 4% reduced, or 3% reduced cost to your spells, or 2%. Sorry, you get a 10% with 5 pieces to your cost of magic abilities. You have 13 with this, and so all your magic abilities are super cheap. And you can keep them up with no problems with this build. And it might look like there's a lot of magicka being used, but in the end, you're not using as much as it looks. On to the crafting, get medicinal use, and then on provisioning, get Gourmand and Connoisseur. Alright, now that I've got that out of my system, let's go over the skills. So, starting with the main bar. Because this is an Ice Staff, you have to know that with Ice Staff tanking, the way you taunt with this is with this right here. And it says, fully charged heavy attacks from Ice Staff will taunt the enemy for 15 seconds and grants you a 3,002 point damage shield. So it gives you a damage shield, and it taunts your enemy, and it does damage. Overall, really good. The problem is that the heavy attack from it can take a little bit to charge up. So when you go into combat, make sure that you are automatically doing this right out the door. You're going to be heavy attacking. So that's how you're going to get your taunt. Moving on, Blockade of Frost's main ability. This applies chilled to enemies, and enemies that are chilled can be immobilized for 4 seconds while they're in this. Really powerful. It does do decent damage, and it also reduces movement speed. So you can stack up a lot of adds in this and slow them down and keep them in place where you have all your AoEs going on. Next ability is Gripping Shards. Now this is a max health ability. It requires you to have a high health for it to work really well. As you can see, it does 854 frost damage, but when you boost yourself up with your max health, which I need to do anyways because I have 2 of the abilities on my bar to show you what happens, so we need to get that Polar Winds going so we can raise our max health. So our max health is now up to 35k, and our Gripping Shards has gone up to almost 1,000 damage, 933 frost damage for every second for 12 seconds. It also reduces movement speed, and any enemies caught in it when you cast it are immobilized and have a greater chance of a chill being applied to them. So, really good. Next one, Polar Winds. Powerful heal. Very powerful heal. Main heal. Okay, you're going to be casting this a lot. It can also heal a nearby ally for 16% of their max health, which is really good, and it heals you for 10% of your max health for 10 seconds, and it takes like 4 times, so it's really pretty good. Next up, we have Dampen Magic. This is a damage shield. This is our main mitigation of damage shield, and it's the most powerful damage shield you can have on this build because it's a light armor thing, and it's based off of max magicka. It's crazy. You'll see. It is capped at 50% of your max health, and this thing we're capped. So next up is Shimmering Shield. This is a very powerful shield, again based on max health. So the higher your health, the stronger this shield. I want to show you this also so you can see for yourselves. This thing goes up to like a 65k shield. So as long as your Polar Winds is going and you have a heal, you're going to get that 61,519 point damage shield from 3 projectiles. It also gives you magicka back, and it grants you major heroism. So it's going to give you 3 ultimate every 1.5 seconds, but you do have to be hit by projectiles. Luckily enough, there's enough projectile throwing things in this game to make this come off pretty quick. Next on our bar is what makes this build, and that is the Northern Storm. And the reason why I say it makes this build is because this thing gives you 30% damage reduction for 8 seconds. So for you and anybody within 8 meters of you. So it's a very powerful defensive skill. It does good damage. It also reduces movement speed by 70% for that 8 seconds. It's not 1 second, it's not 3, it's 8 seconds of reduced movement speed. And it really helps keeping trash close together. Now, trash fights, this skill is awesome. Like, the best skill you can have for trash fights. So I try to save this for when there's big trash fights in trials or dungeons, so I can get this off. It also gives 30% damage reduction to me and my allies, which reduces incoming damage to all of us, making our survivability much greater. So anyone that's standing within 10 meters, remember that. Moving on to the back bar. Elemental Drain. Now, Elemental Drain, you got to have this on your bar. Because this is your main application of Major Breach, and it lasts for 24 seconds, which reduces the enemy's spell resist by 5,280. It also applies minor magicka steal on that enemy, so anyone who hits that enemy gets 300 magicka back every 1 second when damaging them, and it doesn't matter what kind of damage you're doing. Any damage ability that you hit them with will give you the 300 magicka. So really, really powerful. This thing has insane magicka sustain because of this, Bullnetch, all kinds of stuff. And if you have an absorb magicka thing on your back bar, you never run out of resources. Like, literally never. Your resources are almost capped all the time. Right, so moving on to the next ability, Lotus Blossom. This is another really powerful skill. The reason why this one's so powerful for you is it's a heal. Your light attacks and heavy attacks heal you or somebody close to you for 1,478 for the light attack or 4,435 for the heavy attack. But you can also crit heal people. So this heal can be a lot bigger. Next up, Betty Netch. This is really, really good. It gives us magicka return over 27 seconds. It also gives us major sorcery, and also can be used every time you cast it to remove 1 negative effect. Now, between Lotus Blossom and this, you're going to get Major Prophecy and Major Sorcery, so you're going to get increased crit and increased spell damage. This is going to help with your Ice Heart activation. It's going to help with your heals, the higher crit, all that stuff, so you're going to get really good stuff out of these two things. Next up, Ice Fortress. This gives you your Major Ward, Major Resolve, your increases physical and spell resist for 24 seconds by 5,280. Really good benefit to you because you want those higher resistances, and this is how you're getting it. It also gives you minor protection. Now, they removed minor protection from the Templars buff for resistances, so the Warden is the only class that gets 8% damage reduction now from its major resistance buffs. This makes it very powerful. It's a very powerful skill. So yeah, keep this up at all times. Next up we have Inner Light. This gives us increased max magicka by 5%, and then with the passive we get a 7% total, and then we have the spell critical from it. So on the back bar we really don't need Lotus Blossom, but it helps to have it up anyways. This is just here for the max magicka. And then last but not least, we have Aggressive Warlord, which increases your group members' max magicka stamina by 10% for 30 seconds, and grants everyone major force, increasing their critical damage by 15%. Really is quite interesting how well this can work on you as well, because of how much crit and damage you have. You end up with a 42%, and then if you have somebody giving you extra crit, you end up with a 45% crit chance. So your crit is actually really good. So that's the skills, guys. Moving on to the CP, starting with the red tree, we have 66 in Ironclad. This reduces damage taken for direct damage attacks by 22%. And because of the way this build is set up, we had to put 10 into Spell Shield to increase our spell resistance higher than our physical by just a small margin. Otherwise, our physical is going to be higher than our spell resist. Moving on over here, we have 56 in a Hardy and 56 in Elemental Defender. This gives us 12% damage reduction from Flame, Frost, Shock, Magic. And then over here, Physical, Poison, and Disease. With the 8% damage reduction from Ice Fortress, we actually get a 20%. So, and that stacks with these two. That minor protection does. Now, these, Ironclad and Thick Skin, stack with Hardy and Elemental Defender. So when you have Ice Fortress up, you have a 20% damage reduction. On top of that, you get another 12% from damage over time effects. So you are getting a lot more mitigation here. Along with this, you're getting a lot. You just get insane mitigation with this build. It's crazy. Light armor focus 3. The reason why I did that is so we could get a little bit of a boost in our light armor. Just a little. We don't need a massive one, just to kind of get us up higher. And then moving on to this final tree in the red tree, we have 40 in the Bastion. Now, a lot of people are saying don't put in a Bastion if you're using Annulment or the Conjure Word from the Mage's Guild, from the Sork, or from Light Armor. Do it, because it does improve the shield strength. Now, unless you're capped on how much health you can get from it, then don't. But it does improve the shield strength if you have really high health and high magicka but can't meet the health cap like this build. Putting into it's really important. On tanks, it's really important. On non-tanks, don't worry about it. Alright, quick recovery. 11 into here. This gives us 3% healing received. I know it's not much, but it does help. Moving on over here, we have 56 in a Warlord, which reduces our break free cost by 20%. This saves us a lot in stamina, which is really good. We do have 5 in a Sprinter, which reduces our sprint cost by 3%. We are in light armor, so we get like 15% sprint cost reduction, and this adds a little bit more to it. Next up, Bashing Focus, reducing the cost of Bash by 14%. We do bash enemies being a tank, so having that saves us stamina. Moving on to the middle tree here, we have 43 into Arcanist and 43 into Tenacity. This gives us 10% magic recovery. This gives us 10% magicka return on our fully charged heavy attacks with our staff, which we don't get a lot of return on our staff, so this extra 10 does help though. So you get a base of 30% return on any weapon. With this, we get another 10. If you're wearing heavy armor, you get 25% more, and if you're using a Resto staff, you actually get 30% more. So you get, with Resto and heavy armor, you get more back on your heavy attacks than you do anyone else. So it's really good to go with this for light armor. Moving on, 56 into Shadow Ward. This reduces our block cost by 20%. Since we do have the Ice Staff, we get 36% block cost reduction. This is another 20, so we get a total of 56, which saves us resources. So next up, we have 44 into Tumbling. This reduces dodge roll cost by 14%, or 17%, but because we have the 1 medium, we get another 4 with it. So we actually get really good dodge roll with this. If you guys are wondering what's going on up here in the corner, that is the chat from the tank Discord. So, and I want to thank Leofa for allowing me to come over there and join them again. I've been reading a lot of that. A lot of good info there, even though a lot of it can be meta. But still, a lot of good info. Moving on to this blue tree, we have 43 into Blessed. This increases our healing done by 10%. And then 56 into Elfborn. This increases our critical heals and critical damage by 20%. We have 43 into Elemental Expert. This increases Flame, Frost, Shock, and Magic damage. We are using a Warden, so they get 6% in Frost. So why not boost it up to 16%? So that's what we get with the Warden. And if you are playing a high elf with this build, you will have a 20%, by the way, with this in here. So you end up with a lot more magic damage on them. Frost damage. We have 7 into Spell Erosion, just gives us a little kick in our Spell Pen. And then we have 25 into Staff Expert, increasing our light and heavy attack damage with the Destruction Staff by 15%. And then 40 into Master at Arms, which gives us 16% increased direct damage. Since our light and heavy attacks are direct damage, getting this and this really boosts it up and really allows us to play open world really easily, all that kind of stuff. Alright, moving on. 56 in the Lithometers. This helps with just our Ice Wall. That's it. It's the only ability that's affected. So, this ability here, just so you guys know, this ability is not affected by anything other than your max health. Not even spell damage. So, the reason we boost up our spell damage, though, is so that we get increased capabilities from this, it does kind of help with this, because you're going to be doing damage, so you're going to get heals. But other than that, the increased spell damage isn't necessary, really, but it does help. And also, this is just based off of purely max health. So both of these are purely max health. Nothing else is affects them. So with the CP, you don't need a lot of other things in there. So but that's the CP, that's the gear, that's the skills, that's everything. Now, you guys are probably wondering, well, how effective is it? Well, let's go find out, shall we? Now, I hope, Nellum, if you're watching this, I hope you're excited, because you're going to find out, like, how good this one is. Now, because I'm wearing Alicia's Bulwark, that 10%, like I said, it stacks with Weakening and Minor Maim. So you get, with Minor Maim, you get 15%, or 12%, I think it is, damage reduction, and then, or damage mitigation from their attacks. Then with Weakening, you get 500 weapon damage off. And then, together, the two, it's over 50% of the enemy's damage that you reduce. Then when you have that extra 10%, you get basically 60% of their damage reduction. You know, their damage reduced to almost, it's crazy. Like, you don't take anything. And then when you have it applied, when that effect is up, and it can be up even with your shields. They can even be affected by that, even with your shields up. So, because as long as you're taking damage of any kind, it's going to proc that set. And there's our damage shields. And just so you can see, I can sit here and just use Wall of Elements and the damage shields and pretty much just keep all the damage off. I don't even need to buff up my resistances. But I do need the heavy attack, so I can get my resources back. But I would suggest keeping your resistance buffs up, because it's really important. Oops, I did something wrong there. And like, when you have all your shields up with this build, you end up with a 28k damage shield, guys. And this thing is, like, if you can keep it up well, like, you don't have to worry about anything. Like, you will not take enough damage to really see any major issues. So, and you generate ultimate like crazy. So, I'll go ahead and pop Warhorn just so I can show you guys. So, like, even with Warhorn up and stuff, like, I get a lot of health. I have that already. I already have the, I have 31k Magicka now. So, and remember, this isn't about dealing damage. This is about tanking. So I'm doing my job. And the thing about ice staff tanking also, by the way, you can apply the taunt as many times as you want. You don't have the same issues you do with sword and board. So if you guys know anything about sword and board tanking, if you taunt with sword and board for some reason, if you over taunt, the enemy will come off you. But with ice staff, they don't do that. They will stay on you, even because the taunt will not go away. And that's mainly because of how long it takes to cast taunt. With the ice staff, I think that has something to do with it. With sword and board, you can reapply taunt as many times as you want, like as fast as you want, every second. So with ice staff, it's not that way because it takes time to charge the staff. So. And that is pretty much how it works. I mean, and just so you guys can see, with all the shields, that's 26k between those two, and then with the other one, it takes you up to 29k. So just under 28k, or over 29k in shields. And then when you add in the resistance factor, your resistance factor plays into that a lot. So if you know this build, if you can play this build, I will be honest, it takes a little bit to get used to playing when you've been a sword and board tank or a two-handed tank for a long time, but it is able and it is powerful. So it's probably one of the most powerful shield tanks I've ever made. But that's it, guys. That is the ice tank. Now you guys can see why I call it that. The thing's just an ice beast. So if you guys like this build, you guys can hit that like button. If you guys want to see more builds by me or other videos by me, you can hit that subscribe button. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy might see you in game. Bye.